After inheriting 11M, I survived a crash you won't believe what my husband's new wife exposed. Emily Thompson barely felt the rain beating against the hospital windows as she scrubbed in for another shift. The familiar routine of patient care soothed her chaotic mind, until the words "an unexpected inheritance" pulled her back into her reality with a jolt. $11 million. The news came wrapped in the somber cloak of her father's passing. A father she hadn't known, whose absence had shaped her life in ways she was finally starting to understand. How could someone she had never had a father-daughter relationship with suddenly leave her this fortune? Confusion knotted in her stomach. Was it gratitude? Rage? Relief? As whispers echoed off the sterile walls, her colleagues expressed shock over a man that had simply been a name, a ghost, in Emily's life. The higher-ups saw potential where Emily saw guilt. Could money really erase the hurt of abandonment? Swallowed by a tumultuous wave of emotion, she suppressed the thoughts. Patients depended on her. Their pains were tangible. They were her lifeline. But that afternoon, on a slick road, the fragile balance of her world shattered. The crash left a gaping hole, not just in her physical existence, but in her emotional state, as fear settled in her bones. How could she heal? The inheritance meant nothing if she couldn't walk or care for others. No amount of money could guard against broken glass and twisted metal. Before the collision, the news had lit a fire within her, igniting old dreams and desires to build a future, but now all she felt was vulnerability. Weeks passed before she gingerly stepped over the threshold of her childhood home, filled with memories. Dusty books lined the shelves, and every photo felt like a relic. As Emily sorted through the clutter, an unfamiliar sorrow washed over her. She stumbled upon her father's old medical journals, a legacy obscured by neglect. Pages dripped with compassion for each patient, a manifesto of healing. Did he really care, or had wealth robbed him of his character? Life as a nurse revolved around service, commitment. Maybe this was the piece she had been missing. But just as she molded a fresh vision of who her father might have been, the phone call came. Mark was at home with Sandra, a sharp-tongued woman who had quickly filled the void Emily thought she would mend. The new reshuffling of their lives twisted her insides tighter. "Can you believe what I found out?" Sandra crowed through the line, her laughter ice-cold and piercing. "Your father had a past. It's all so scandalous." Emily's heart raced. Was he a hero or the villain in her story? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The tension grew, a tightening band of anxiety wrapping around her mind. Sandra's barbs cut deep, revealing layers of betrayal and reminding her of the very distance she had longed to bridge. One moment she was Emily, the determined nurse. The next, the woman torn apart by unsettling truths. Was she supposed to reconcile the man who abandoned her with the one whose reputation was spiraling out of control? It felt unbearable. Just when she thought she could hold onto some sense of normalcy, a message appeared on her phone, a text from an unknown number. Her breath hitched. "You don't know the whole truth about your father. Come find me if you dare." The shadows of her past beckoned, demanding a confrontation. Would she find the courage to unravel the tangled web of deceit, or would it ensnare her? The intricate dance between hope and terror pulsated in her veins, leaving her suspended on the precipice of a revelation that could shatter or save her. Emily blinked, her heart racing against the weight of the text. The anonymity of the sender felt like a shroud, smothering any rational thought. Curiosity wrestled with caution. She was fatigued from the chaos of the past weeks, yet an insatiable hunger for truth clawed within her. She stepped into the living room, the familiar smell of her childhood home a bittersweet reminder of innocence lost. Photographs adorned every surface, frozen moments of laughter, joy, and a seemingly perfect family. But now, Beneath the veneer of happiness, shadows lurked. What if her father's past was more than mere scandal? What if it was a mirror reflecting her own decisions? The thoughts spiraled, intertwining with the remnants of her unsettled inheritance. Determined not to let fear dictate her actions, Emily reached for her laptop, searching for clues. As the screen illuminated, a rush of vitality surged through her weakened limbs. Unraveling her father's secrets might just be the key to understanding herself. She typed furiously, keywords flying across the search bar. Walter Thompson scandal, medical malpractice, and abandonment. Each query unveiled articles shading her father in a less forgiving light. Had he crushed lives for profit? Was the wealth he left behind stained with the cruelty of his choices? Hours slipped by in a haze of revelations and denial. The possibility of a tarnished legacy played on repeat. Though she wished to distinguish herself from her father, in moments of vulnerability, doubt clawed at her. Had his failures birthed her own entanglements? She hesitated, logging into social media to peer into her father's past, to see if any estranged family might be willing to speak. Then a post caught her eye, of photos shared by a familiar face. Her father's former medical partner looked older, weathered, but the eyes held wisdom. A flicker of resolve ignited within Emily. If she could find him, perhaps he could reveal the man behind her father's facade, the man she yearned to both condemn and understand. She reached for her phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed. "Matthew Jennings, please," she murmured into the receiver, her heart drumming as she contemplated the confession she hoped he might offer. With a click, the other end picked up a warm, yet cautious voice greeted her. Emily introduced herself, bearing the delicate truth of her quest. By the time the call ended, she felt lighter, as if shedding layers of guilt and confusion. Matthew had agreed to meet her, to share what he could about her father's choices, both personal and professional. Discussion brewed within, integrating sparks of hope and the menacing tendrils of uncertainty. As days passed, she prepared for their meeting with an ambivalence that buzzed under her skin. What would Matthew reveal? Each scenario weighed heavily on her psyche. She envisioned herself confronting her father's truths, the intricacies of his character, and the ramifications of his decisions. Clarity slipped through her fingers like sand, and yet, her resolve intensified. She would not allow her father's shadow to taint her future. Each step toward understanding was a step toward her own empowerment, a journey away from self-doubt and toward resolution. Emily shelved the memories of her father's betrayal as she dissected her own vulnerabilities. The night before their meeting, she stood before the mirror, questioning the reflections staring back. Who was she becoming? Was she ready to embrace the darker shades of her lineage? The battle within her simmered until she resolved to redefine her narrative. And then, just as she steeled herself for the next day, another text pinged on her phone. A photo of Matthew Jennings, only this time, it was him sitting next to someone familiar, Sandra. A chill gripped her heart as she realized this meeting had just become infinitely more complicated. What hidden agendas lay behind Sandra's smiling face? The unpredictable web became ever more entangled, and Emily feared she might soon find herself at a crossroads, confront the facts or entrap herself in the familiar chaos of deceit. Would her father's legacy bring clarity or merely set her on a path of deeper confusion? The stakes felt higher than ever as the dawn crept towards her pivotal meeting, and apprehension sank its teeth into her core, urging her to question everything she held true. Emily woke with the sun filtering through the dusty curtains of her childhood home, illuminating the path toward her impending confrontation. The room felt heavy with the weight of her past, as if every shadow held a secret waiting to be unearthed. She took a deep breath, wrestling with a cocktail of anticipation and dread. The night's revelations about Sandra left her grappling with uncertainty. She couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting was a double-edged sword. As she prepared for her rendezvous with Matthew, every moment took on an oversized significance. The familiar scent of her breakfast reminded her of quieter days, but this morning was anything but ordinary. She would confront the ghosts of her family, unearthing truths too long buried under layers of denial. Each meticulous task brushing her hair, Choosing her clothes felt like a ritual of empowerment, slicking on a blazer to cultivate an air of professionalism. She fought against the unsettling doubt creeping into her thoughts. It was vital she didn't let the fear of discovery paralyze her. Her father's choices no longer dictated her destiny. She was ready to claim agency over her own narrative. The drive to the cafe was punctuated with moments of introspection. The neighborhood's scenery contrasted sharply with the turmoil brewing within her. She replayed snippets of her conversation with Matthew in her mind, keenly aware of the stakes. Beyond learning about Walter Thompson, there might be layers to his legacy intertwined with her own future. Was there a way to separate her identity from the taint of her father's past? Upon arriving, Emily spotted Matthew seated at a table, noticeably anxious yet relieved to see her. His graying hair framed a face punctuated by worry lines, a testament to a life spent in the whirlwind of medical ethics and moral dilemmas. As she approached, he stood up, his eyes revealing a flicker of memories shared. "Emily, thank you for coming," he said, his voice steady yet soft, acknowledging the gravity of the meeting. After exchanging pleasantries, they settled into a deep, confounding discussion. Matthew's insights unveiled a perspective she never expected. Her father was not merely a man of ambition but also a complex figure battling his own demons. He shared how Walter had cared deeply for his patients, yet passion had morphed into profit, obscuring his moral compass. The narrative twisted further when Matthew mentioned his partnership with Sandra. A sharp pang of betrayal crashed through Emily. How could Sandra have been complicit? Her life intertwined with her father's choices. The conversation turned to matters of legacy. "Emily, your father's decisions affect countless lives, including yours. But it's vital you understand that you have the power to carve your own path," Matthew stated, his gaze piercing through her uncertainty. She absorbed his words, reflecting on her own journey. Wasn't he that what she had been striving for all along? To detach from the shadows of her family's past, yet here she was, grappling with familial accountability. Could she use this knowledge as a springboard to rebuild her identity and values? Each revelation layered another question. What of the wealth that burdened her now? How could she channel the resources left behind to initiate change rather than perpetuate a legacy of deception? The duality of her father's life echoed her own struggles. She could be a force for good, irrespective of her inheritance. As Matthew continued, Emily felt the weight of decision pressing down on her. Confrontation loomed. What do I really want? How do I want to approach those affected by my father's actions? She pondered, shoving aside flashes of anger and resentment toward both him and Sandra. Just then, Matthew hesitated. His expression shifted, shadowed by something unspoken. "There's one more thing," he trailed off, the tension quickening in the air. Emily felt her heart race, and a coil of anxiety twisted in her stomach. There was more to the story, something still lurking in the wings, waiting for the right moment to emerge. The shock of these revelations sent her into a spiral of contemplation. What would she do with the information that could alter every semblance of normalcy she clung to? And as Matthew opened his mouth to divulge what lay beneath the layers of her father's past, Emily could only wonder if she was indeed ready to face the truths that might forever change her path. The moment hung heavy in the air, the turning point drawing near, and Emily braced herself for what was about to unfold. Matthew's voice broke through the thick tension like shattering glass. Walter had a darker side, Emily. Decisions that went beyond ambition, things that didn't just haunt him but left scars on everyone involved. His words hung in the air, heavy with implication and unsaid truths. Emily could feel her stomach knotting as she pushed herself to keep listening, a fierce determination snaking its way through her fear. "What do you mean?" she asked, her tone more desperate than she intended, pushing down the rising tide of panic. Her heart beat rapidly, a frantic drumroll for whatever bombshell was about to be dropped. He glanced around the cafe, as if making sure no one was tuned into their conversation, before looking back at her. The funding for certain treatments, and the way he prioritized profit. There are accusations, lawsuits that he buried. I didn't want to tell you this without proof, but he pulled out a folder she hadn't noticed earlier and slid it towards her. This came to my attention after he passed. I thought it might help explain his choices. Emily's fingers trembled slightly as she took the folder. Inside lay shipments of correspondence, reports, and legal documents that screamed her father's name. The deeper she delved into the pages, the more her world turned upside down. Was this the legacy she had to grapple with? These weren't just stories of missed opportunities, they were tales of anguish, betrayal, and a facade her father had built meticulously throughout his career. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked, choking on each word. Rage bubbled to the surface, the anger aimed not just at her father, but at the entire system that had shielded him. "Because you need to know what you've inherited, Emily. This is not just money or property. It's tremendous responsibility." Matthew's sincerity matched the urgency conveyed in his gaze. "You have the chance to make it right, to either follow in his footsteps or forge a new path entirely." As she absorbed his words, a flicker of understanding sparked within her. This inheritance couldn't simply define her. It could also be a tool, a means for her to rectify past wrongs.
"Can you help me?"
she asked, her voice steadier than before. The intensity of the situation pushed her into clarity. "Of course," he said, his relief evident. "But this won't be easy. People will oppose you. There are many invested in keeping this under wraps." Emily took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenges ahead. Doubts flickered like candle flames in her mind, but an ember of determination ignited in her chest. It was time to reclaim her narrative, both personally and professionally. "I want to be pushed around," she said, the defiance settling into her voice. "If this is the path I've been given, I'll own it, every success and every mistake." Words buoyed by newfound conviction coursed through her. She knew the urgency of her decision. Matthew leaned back slightly, a glimmer of admiration in his expression. "That's the spirit I hoped you would find." But just as she felt the first push of momentum in the right direction, a text message buzzed through her phone, shattering the moment. "It's Sandra," she whispered, the elation that had blossomed within her instantly curdling into caution. "What does it say?" Matthew asked, peering over, intrigue etched across his features. Taking a breath, she read the message. "We need to talk. It's about your father and me." The words dripped with implications, and Emily was left wrestling with the sudden realization that her confrontation with the truth was far from over. As she locked eyes with Matthew, a fleeting glance of understanding passed between them. The deeper she dug, the more entangled in secrets she would become. Resolved to confront the past head-on, Emily rose from the table. "Let us schedule another meeting to start working on a plan. And I need the full details on everything you can give me," she declared, her voice unwavering despite the storm swirling around her. Yet, as she stepped out into the bright glare of day, an unsettling thought crept into her mind. Every answer could lead to more questions. And now, it was Sandra who held the potential for another shocking revelation, one that could reshape her understanding of her father's world and her own place within it. Emily had taken a pivotal step forward, but who would emerge unscathed when the past finally came to light? Stepping outside, the sunlight felt sharp against her skin, a cruel reminder that the world continued to move, indifferent to the turmoil brewing inside her. Emily's steps quickened as she navigated through the bustling streets, her mind racing faster than her feet. She needed to see Sandra, to confront whatever secrets lay tangled between the two of them, but a part of her hesitated. Sandra had been a confidant, someone she trusted in the quieter moments of her life. Now, however, that trust hung by a thread, and every word likely dripped with ulterior motives. Emily clenched her jaw at the thought. That evening, she sat at her kitchen table, sifting through the folder Matthew had given her. The room was drenched in silence. The only sound was the occasional rustle of paper as she combed through pages filled with corporate jargon and legal terminology. Each document revealed more layers of her father's conflicting ambitions. Her heart pounded with a mix of resentment and a strange sense of empowerment. If he buried those secrets, perhaps it was time for her to unearth them, to carve a different legacy from the rubble he left behind. However, confronting Sandra presented its own risks. What if the other woman had known more than she let on? Or worse, What if she too was complicit in the deceit? An involuntary shiver coursed through her as those possibilities spiraled through her mind. Each scenario challenged her resolve, nudging at the doubts she desperately wanted to silence. It was time for action. She needed to arm herself not only with information but also with unwavering determination. Emily pulled out her laptop, the light illuminating her face in the dim room as she started outlining her approach. She would need legal advice, allies within the healthcare community that could help her, and most importantly a plan to either redeem her father's tarnished legacy or, if necessary, dismantle it entirely. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, Emily's outline transformed into actionable steps. Reach out to a lawyer knowledgeable in inheritance disputes. Research the accusations mentioned in the documents. She even planned to set up meetings with former employees who were brave enough to voice their concerns. There was a world of information buried beneath the surface, and she intended to bring it into the light. But then, the echo of her phone vibrating against the table brought her back. It was a notification from Sandra. "Are you free tomorrow? I think we need to talk about Walter." Fear mingled with adrenaline as she pressed her lips together, her heart racing anew. This conversation could either lead her closer to the truth or unravel her entirely. Emily understood she was at a crossroads. Whichever direction she chose would define not only her relationship with Sandra, but the course of her own future. Taking a deep breath, she texted back, "Yes. Let us meet." A sense of purpose anchored her, and for the first time since her father's death, Emily felt the weight of determination outstepping despair. She was not just reclaiming a narrative, she was rewriting her own story. As she prepared for the confrontation, another message flashed across the screen from a blocked number. "You need to be careful, Emily. You don't know the dangers you're diving into." The blood rushed in her ears. Who was this? What did they know? The stakes had risen, and loomed ahead was an unsettling unknown that she had yet to navigate. Resolving to stay steadfast, she reminded herself of what was at risk. It dawned on her that her journey toward personal redemption was forged in fire. And with that thought, she quashed any lingering hesitations. One way or another, the truth would come to the surface. Eager to uncover it all, she wouldn't back down now, not even as shadows of threats crept in from the corners of her life. How deep did the conspiracy go, and who could she trust in a game where everyone seemed to wear a mask? Tomorrow's meeting with Sandra would either be a step closer to resolution or a descent into further chaos. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting streaks of light across the room as Emily sat on the edge of her bed. There was a palpable heaviness in the air, charged with anticipation and dread. She was preparing for a confrontation that could reveal secrets long buried, yet the stakes felt even higher than that. The messages from her block number correspondent echoed in her mind, repeating a dire warning. You need to be careful. What lay ahead could forever change her perception of the past, and possibly her future. She pushed herself to stand, the coolness of the tiled floor grounding her as she moved through her morning routine. Each movement was deliberate, a small act of reclaiming control. She picked out her outfit carefully, wanting to project confidence, but feeling the fragility of her resolve. The tailored blazer she chose felt like armor, shielding her from both Sandra's unpredictable nature and the looming uncertainties of her father's legacy. After a rushed breakfast, Emily grabbed her bag and stepped out. The city buzzed with life, entirely unaware of the seismic shift taking place within her. As she walked toward the cafe where they agreed to meet, she questioned herself, analyzing every possible outcome. Would Sandra accept the weight of their shared history, or had that history rotted in the shadows of deceit? The anxiety twisted in her stomach as the cafe came into view. She arrived first, choosing a secluded table in the back, a place where she could observe without being exposed. Her heart thumped as she glanced at the door. The sound of the bell dinging over the entrance heightened her senses. Each customer that walked in made her pulse quicken, each one a potential symbol of hope or adversity. When Sandra finally entered, her confident gait and assured smile belied the tension that pulled at Emily's insides. Emily tried to read her, to figure out if her friend was the assisting confidant she needed or a mere difficulty in disguise. "Emily," Sandra greeted, her voice bright. Thanks for meeting me. Emily offered a tight smile, gesturing for her to sit. What followed was a cautious exchange, small talk layered with palpable tension. Emily's mind raced, plotting her approach like a lawyer preparing for cross-examination. She couldn't afford to falter. She needed to get to the heart of the matter quickly. Sandra, I know things are complicated between us, Emily began, her voice steady despite the thunderstorm brewing within. But we need to address the things that have been left unsaid since Walter's death. Sandra, her expression shifting just slightly, leaned forward. I think we both know there are hidden truths we need to unpack, she said, a hint of challenge mixed with curiosity in her eyes. In that moment, Emily felt a flicker of relief, and with it, determination surged. The time had come to excavate the foundations of trust and betrayal. I found some documents, she said, hoping to maintain control over the conversation. They suggest that Walter wasn't entirely transparent about his dealings. I need to know what you know. Sandra's expression darkened, but only for a moment, suggesting that the truth was not something she was willing to toss aside lightly. There are things you don't understand, Emily. Things that could put you in danger if you pursue them. Emily leaned back slightly, a storm of thoughts swirling. Was this a warning or a veiled threat? The underlying tension thickened the air between them. I can handle the risks, Emily replied, the fire returning to her voice. I just need answers. I need to understand my legacy, for my own sake. For a moment, silence stretched, a breath of uncertainty filling the gap between their intentions and fears. Emily was standing on the precipice not just of this conversation, but of her entire future. Then you really have no idea what you're getting into, Sandra finally said, hesitating slightly before her gaze hardened. And trust me, it's not just about Walter anymore. The cryptic warning hung in the air like a storm cloud about to burst, and dread coiling inside Emily at the implications. She felt it, a shift that marked a turning point not just for her relationship with Sandra, but also in her quest for truth. Determination fought alongside her fear, battling for dominance in the forefront of her psyche. Was she ready for the truth if it threatened to unravel the very fabric of her existence? The stakes were higher than she had anticipated, and the threat of danger emanating from these hidden depths began to feel more real than she'd imagined. Then let us uncover it together, Emily said, her voice imbued with resolve as she leaned in closer, ready to unveil the darkness lurking beneath. The moment hung there, ripe with potential and peril. Unbeknownst to them, a figure lingered outside, watching the exchange with intense scrutiny, ready to intervene if the revelations became too close to the truth. As Emily wrestled with this new alliance, she couldn't shake the feeling that the real reckoning was just around the corner, lurking in shadows she hadn't yet identified. What revelations awaited them both, and how far would she go to piece this puzzle together? A flicker of uncertainty crossed Emily's face as she realized that the shadows dappled across their conversation were darker than she had prepared for. She felt the words dance on her lips, ready to emerge, yet hesitated. This was not just about uncovering her father's past, it was about reorienting her entire identity. What if finding the truth revealed aspects of her father's character that she wasn't prepared to face? Or worse, what if it implied that she might inherit more than just wealth? Neither woman spoke for a moment, the air heavy with unresolved tension and unsaid fears. Emily's resolve wavered, caught between the desperate desire for answers and the instinctual urge to retreat back into the safety of ignorance. Did you understand what you just said? Sandra broke the silence, her voice barely a whisper now, laden with gravity. This could ruin you. The truth isn't just shocking. It's dangerous. Emily felt a pang of indignation wash over her. You act as if I'm a child who can't bear the weight of reality. I deserve to know the full story. I can't let Walter or anyone else dictate my understanding of my life. Her words hung in the air, bold yet tinged with vulnerability. She could feel the faint pulse of her heartbeat against the quiet of the cafe, the eyes of other patrons flitting in her direction, perhaps overhearing fragments of their heated exchange. There are pieces of this puzzle that you're not ready to fit together, Sandra said, lowering her voice further. leaning in as if sharing a secret. "It won't just be about Walter. We'll end up exposing things about us, about our families." Emily couldn't allow Sandra's caution to turn into fear. It wasn't merely about uncovering secrets, it was about growth, facing every jagged edge of her past and claiming her identity. "I'm willing to take that risk," she asserted. "For once, I need to be the one in control of my narrative." "Control?" "You're talking about diving into a storm without a life raft," Sandra replied, a frown settling between her brows. "What will you do when the waves come crashing down?" "I'll swim," Emily replied without flinching, determination hardening every syllable. "That has always been my choice." Emily could see Sandra's expression morph into one of contemplation, the challenge of her conviction weighing heavily on both of them. For a fleeting moment, Emily read a glimmer of respect in her friend's eyes. It felt liberating, like a gust of wind scattering the clouds of doubt that lingered above her. Sandra straightened herself, reconsidering her approach. "Fine. But before we proceed, you need to prepare yourself emotionally and strategically. We need a plan." A ripple of adrenaline coursed through Emily. This was a new phase, an avenue for growth, not just as a daughter in mourning, but as a woman stepping into her own agency. She felt a dual energy of exhilaration and fear. The unexpected alliance with Sandra represented a vital turning point, not just their relationship, but also in Emily's understanding of herself and her world. The cafe, once a mere backdrop for her doubts, now buzzed with possibilities. She felt alive, ignited by a purpose that had previously eluded her. This was no longer about Wall Street connections or surviving under the shadow of her father's decisions. It was about unearthing the truth, and perhaps unearthing herself along the way. "Let us outline what we know and what we need," Emily proposed, bringing order to the chaos that swirled around them. "You and I will piece this together, but we must be completely transparent with each other." An agreement, a pact between two women tethered by history and ambition, was forged. As they began to jot down notes on a napkin, deep within Emily stirred a sense of dread and exhilaration that intertwined. Little did they know, the unseen figure outside the cafe had been watching their exchange with deeper interest. The hints of danger began to ripple again in Emily's consciousness. What buried truths would surface, and could they withstand the forces about to be unleashed? Before they could dive deep into their plans, the bell above the cafe door chimed again, cutting through the layered tension. Emily's gaze snapped toward the entrance. The familiar figure stepping in sent her heart racing. Facing new reckoning was never a straightforward path, and with every decision taking shape, uncertainty loomed closer than ever. Would they find their answers, or would they unleash unknown terrors they'd only just begun to understand? Emily shifted her focus from the door and back to the hastily scrawled notes on the napkin as her heart raced. The familiar figure strolling into the cafe was none other than Samuel, her father's longtime lawyer and confidant. His presence was both a comfort and a source of tension, the kind that reminded her of the weight of responsibility she now bore, an heir to both material wealth and complex legacies. "Stay calm," she whispered to herself, but her pulse thudded insistently in her ears. She scrutinized Samuel as he scanned the room, finally locking onto their table, his brow creased in thought. Beneath the polished surface of her composure, a storm brewed. "Should we bring him in?" Sandra murmured, barely masking her apprehension. Emily considered this. Samuel held answers, yet he also represented the old world she was trying to step away from. She shook her head. "Not yet. We have to establish what we want to uncover first. Once we involve him, there's no going back." A sense of clarity flickered within Emily, igniting the thoughts that spiraled in her mind. The stakes were high, but so was her conviction. Each word from Sandra's lips in the last few minutes echoed in her mind, weaving themselves into a potent tapestry of determination. "Let us refine our questions first, Sandra." "Agreed," Sandra replied, her eyes flicking back to Samuel, who had just approached their table, wearing his usual serious demeanor. "Emily, I didn't realize you'd be here," he said, offering a tight smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. We need to talk. The invitation felt less like an offer and more like a summons. The world around Emily dimmed momentarily, a spotlight focusing on the decisions awaiting her. We're not ready yet. The words slipped out before she could second-guess herself. Samuel blinked, taken aback. This isn't just casual conversation. There are urgent matters to discuss regarding your father's estate. Her heart raced again as she squared her shoulders. This was it. The protective layers she had clung to were being irreversibly peeled away. I appreciate your concern, Samuel, but I need to probe into things myself before I bring anyone else into this. The estate deserves both transparency and clarity moving forward. A subtle shift occurred in his demeanor, a mix of confusion and respect. I understand your desire for independence, but some complexities require immediate attention. You have responsibilities that cannot wait. With every word he spoke, Emily felt a fire igniting within her. It was exhilarating yet petrifying. She understood the implications of her choices vividly. Now the right path could lead her to liberation. The wrong one could bind her forever. Just give me a few days. I will message you, and we can arrange a time to meet that works for both of us, Emily insisted, surprising herself with her own assertiveness. Samuel's lips pressed into a thin line. Very well, he conceded, though she sensed his unease lingering. But know that time is of the essence. As Samuel walked away, Emily felt the air around her thrum with energy. She looked at Sandra, whose eyes gleamed with a mix of admiration and caution. You held your ground. That's a big step, she said suddenly. An idea struck Emily like lightning, a means to equip herself for the looming confrontation. We need to do our research. I need to know everything: legal documents, financial records, family connections. Find out who has the most influence and who might stand in our way. I won't shy away from the truth anymore. The conversation shifted toward logistics, growing more urgent. They spent the next hour pooling resources, ideas, potential contacts, and strategies. Emily felt empowered, vision sharpening as she laid out a temporary framework for their pursuit of the truth. Yet, as the daylight waned and the cafe atmosphere thickened with the evening rush, doubt crept in. A wave of uncertainty washed over her. Which avenues were truly safe to explore? Tomorrow we dive into everything, Emily announced, trying to cling to her momentum as they prepared to leave. She noticed something out of the corner of her eye, a newspaper article left behind on a table that mentioned recent legal disputes regarding her father's estate. The headlines loomed large, promising more than she was prepared to confront. Her heart pounded as she picked it up, the name of a rival family echoing ominously in her mind. This was no simple task. Unearthing her father's past might wrestle her into a deeper conflict. Whatever lay ahead was shrouded in darkness, and she was teetering on the precipice of revelation. Would she find the courage to navigate this treacherous journey, or would the shadows that enveloped her father's legacy swallow her whole? The next morning arrived with a shroud of unease clinging to Emily. The weight of the newspaper article pressed against her chest, filling her with an unmistakable urgency to confront the undercurrents swirling around her father's estate. The sun's golden rays streamed through her window, yet they felt strangely cold and distant, contrasting sharply with the warmth of the new initiatives she planned to undertake. Determined to seize this pivotal moment, she paced her small apartment, mentally rehearsing the strategies she hoped would empower her investigation. Her reflection in the mirror whispered unkind truths about self-doubt and vulnerability, but today she chose not to let those voices drown out her newfound resolve. She was more than a daughter. She was now the custodian of a legacy about which she was growing increasingly aware, and she would stop at nothing to reclaim its narrative. As she gathered her research materials, her phone buzzed with messages. Sandra was eager to meet and brainstorm their next steps. Emily welcomed the distraction, feeling an invigorating rush of accountability. They were in this together. Sandra's steadfast presence felt like an anchor in the sea of uncertainty she was navigating. Arriving at the small co-working space that Sandra had booked, Emily felt an electric energy. They met in a sunlit corner, surrounded by eager entrepreneurs and creative minds. Yet for Emily, the battle they faced was more intimate and profound. The sight of Sandra, determined and focused, reignited her spirits. Okay, I dug into some of those legal documents. There are a number of irregularities you need to know about, Sandra began, her voice steady. She slid a folder across the table brimming with papers covered in fastidious notes. It looks like your father had dealings that were not just about property. There's a lot happening behind the scenes. Emily opened the folder, her pulse quickening as she skimmed each document. The revelations painted a picture more complex than she anticipated, legal labyrinths of contracts and vague terms that implied much more than mere real estate transactions. It felt like a puzzle, demanding both clarity and cunning as they tried to piece together the motives hidden within layers of legal jargon. Look at this, Sandra pointed to one particular contract. This seems to connect your family with the rival family mentioned in the article you found. It's possible they felt they were wronged in some way, prompting their current legal skirmishes with your estate. A complex knot tightened in Emily's gut as she realized this rivalry was more than mere business. It tinged with personal stakes and histories that demanded exploration. Can we find out what exactly went down? Emily questioned, her voice trembling with both fear and fierce adrenaline. All we need are some contacts, people who might have insight into the dispute, Sandra suggested, her focus unwavering. We can also see if there is any way to obtain public records about these disagreements. Knowledge is power, right? As they delved deeper into their research, Emily felt a palpable sense of awakening. Each piece of information they uncovered chipped away at her fear and uncertainty, revealing her latent capabilities. She was becoming more than just a passive beneficiary of her father's decisions. She was asserting her right to understand and reclaim the narrative, yet as enthusiasm built, so did another wave of trepidation. Could exposing these secrets jeopardize the safety of those she cared about? As her mind spiraled into worst-case scenarios, she was met with a sudden realization she needed to confront those fears head-on. "We're not backing down," she declared, determination radiating from her being. "If I take this on, I'll do it with full transparency. Not just for me, for everyone tied to this legacy." Hours faded into focused work as their strategies crystallized. Emily felt invigorated, the shadows of her father's past shifting slowly into view. With her heart thrumming against her ribcage, Emily took one last glance at the documents strewn across the table. She was on the cusp of a revelation that could change everything. What would she discover about her father's true legacy, and would she have the strength to face the tempest that awaited her? Just then, a notification buzzed on her phone, a new email from an unfamiliar address, the subject line simply reading, "We need to talk about your father." A chill shot up her spine, each letter feeling like a thread pulling her closer to the heart of the unknown. What choice would she make next, and how would it define her path ahead? Emily lay in bed, reflecting on the whirlwind of events that had transpired in the last few weeks. She had journeyed from a place of confusion and anger to one filled with determination and strength. The tangled web of her father's legacy had turned into a complex puzzle, which she was finally piecing together, one revelation at a time. Weeks ago, she could hardly have imagined herself confronting the shadows of her father's past, yet here she was armed with knowledge, ready to face whatever lay ahead. With every document she had reviewed and every conversation she had navigated, she had transformed from a passive recipient of her father's inheritance into an active agent of change. Her upcoming meeting with Sandra held the promise of forging a new path. The two women had decided to confront the mounting challenges together. With mutual respect and understanding anchoring their partnership, they were prepared to delve into the murky waters of Walter Thompson's dealings. Emily felt the rush of excitement as they laid out the logistical steps they needed to take, the accountability driving her towards a new purpose. As she prepared for Sandra's arrival, she reflected on how much she had grown. No longer was she simply the daughter of a man whose past haunted her. She was a woman committed to reclaiming her narrative. The trepidation she used to feel about her father's legacy had shifted into an empowering force, propelling her toward clarity. When Sandra knocked on the door, Emily greeted her with a sense of enthusiasm that underscored their shared mission. The energy in the room was palpable as they reviewed the information gathered over the last few days. Each case law, each document outlining Walter's ambiguous financial practices, was a step closer to understanding the ramifications of her inheritance. "Emily," Sandra began, her eyes shining with determination, "what if we present our findings to a reputable lawyer? Someone who can help us navigate this maze legally, rather than just strategically." The idea blossomed within Emily, resonating deeply. Consulting a lawyer not only provided legal grounding but also fueled her confidence in breaking the cycle of silence. "Let's find someone we trust," Emily affirmed, her voice steady. She felt a surge of strength. This wasn't just about reckoning with her father's past, but about ensuring a brighter future. Days passed, and their alliance grew stronger. They connected with legal experts who began to escort them down the path of transparency and accountability. Each meeting confirmed Emily's path. This was her cause to take for both her father's victims and for her own sense of self-worth. One pivotal evening, while poring over the complex legal details, a thought hit her, an unexpected surge of clarity. "What if I approached the media?" she exclaimed, excitement bubbling as she contemplated how raising public awareness could bring accountability. "Shining a light on my father's legacy could help the victims and perhaps prevent future misconduct." Sandra nodded slowly. "It's a bold move. It could backfire if we're not ready." But Emily felt an undeniable sense of agency. This was her moment. Weeks of hard work culminated in a press conference where she would present everything they had discovered. The anxiety that once thrummed beneath her skin vanished, replaced by a resolute calm. Empowered by the truth they had uncovered, she stood before a crowd, journalistic curiosity filling the air as she detailed her father's complicated legacy. With each word, the weight of her past transformed into a banner of personal accomplishment. The acknowledgement of her identity, unbound by inherited shame, had finally emerged. She spoke not just to expose her father, but to reclaim her narrative. Each revelation was a building block in her newfound confidence. As the conference concluded and journalists pressed her for more, the sense of achievement coursed through her. Emily had conquered the complexity of her heritage and demonstrated her resolve to navigate the intricate path of her family's intertwined past and future. In the following weeks, articles emerged, highlighting her father's unethical dealings and shedding light on the lives affected. Recognition began to roll in, not just for the story, but for Emily herself. Professional organizations commended her bravery, schools invited her to speak, and a community developed around advocating for ethical practices in healthcare. That acknowledgement struck a profound chord. Emily felt both validated and transformed. She had evolved from a young woman overshadowed by her father's legacy to a respected voice in the ethical discourse surrounding healthcare. With a solidified sense of purpose and a network of support rallying around her, Emily stood at the edge of a new chapter. Her journey had not just helped her confront her father's choices, it had led her to become a force for good, challenging injustices that had long been hidden. "I'm ready for whatever comes next," she declared into the mirror one morning. The reflection staring back emanated a solidarity she had always yearned for. As she stepped onto the path of authentic personal achievement, Emily embraced the newfound truth about herself. Now, looking at her journey, it was clear. She had conquered not only the ghosts of her father's legacy, but had reclaimed her own identity. Every step taken had brought her from shadows to light, solidifying her place not just as an heir, but as a pioneer for honesty in her professional world. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and comment your reactions and theories about this incredible ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.